prior to April 22nd, 1977. I chose to start the main chronology of this topic on April 22nd, 1977, for many reasons, which I will reveal shortly. But it should be noted that prior to April of 1977, Srila Prabhupada had many times spoke or wrote of how he wanted that his disciples would become gurus after he departs. Many times he pointed out that in the presence of one's own guru, its proper etiquette is one does not take his own disciples. Only after one's guru departs, then one can take one's own disciples. On January 3rd, 1969, in a letter to Hamsadutta, Srila Prabhupada wrote the following, and this is just an excerpt from the letter, quote, "Next January, there will be an examination on this Bhagavad Gita. Papers will be sent by me to all centers, and those securing the minimum passing grade will be given the title as Bhakti Shastri. Similarly, another examination will be held on Lord Chaitanya's appearance day in February 1970, and it will be upon Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Those passing will get the title of Bhakti Vaibhava. Another examination will be held sometime in 1971 on the 4 books, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and Nectar of Devotion. One who passes this examination will be awarded the title of Bhakti Vedanta. I want that all of my spiritual sons and daughters will inherit this title of Bhakti Vedanta, so that the family transcendental diploma will continue through the generations. Those possessing the title of Bhakti Vedanta will be allowed to initiate disciples. Maybe by 1975, all of my disciples will be allowed to initiate and increase the numbers of the generations. That is my program." End of quote. Then on January 12th, 1969, just some days later, Srila Prabhupada wrote a letter to Kirtanananda. And again, I quote an excerpt from that letter. Quote, "A first examination will be held sometimes next January on Bhagavad Gita, as it is, and those passing it will have the degree of Bhakti Shastri. Next year, we will hold an examination on Srimad Bhagavatam, and the person who passes will have the title Bhakti Vaibhava. And the next year, we shall hold an examination on Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Nectar of Devotion, and the Vedanta Sutra. And those who successfully pass will be awarded the title of Bhakti Vedanta. By 1975, all those who have passed all the above examinations will be specifically empowered to initiate and increase the number of Krishna conscious population." End of quote. In both of these letters, both written in January of 1969, Srila Prabhupada had clearly expressed his desire that by 1975, all of his disciples will be qualified and empowered to initiate. I am assuming that this meant that they would initiate their own disciples, as opposed to just being Ritviks who would perform the ceremonies on his behalf. These letters clearly show us that this was and is the desire of his divine grace. We must also note that Srila Prabhupada discussed this idea of exams and awarding titles in many letters and discussions in the following years. And he would mention the title of Bhakti Vedanta, well, Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, Bhakti Vedanta, and he added the title of Bhakti Sarvabhauma. Yet never again did he mention that those who pass the Bhakti Vedanta exam will be allowed to initiate. The only 2 times that he ever mentioned this in connection with giving these exams and these titles was in these very first 2 letters on the topic written in January of 1969. Even though he did give the Bhakti Shastra exams in 1969, possibly 1970 and 1971, August of 1971 was the last mention I found of it in the Vedabase until January of 1976, when Srila Prabhupada brings up the idea once again, stating that he would introduce the exams the next year, which would be 1977. Tap on the ancillary note regarding Bhakti Shastri exams for more details. I joined ISKCON in 1973, and I never heard about these exams until years after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance. In 1975, when I was to be given Brahman initiation, I was asked to write a paper on the topic of Brahman initiation, but there was no exam. At least we were not given any formal certificates. Srila Prabhupada actually wanted formal certificates awarded, stating that those who got second initiation and passed the exam were Bhakti Shastris and were ordained ministers of ISKCON. Sadly, this was not done at the time. But back to those two letters in 1969, where he stated that by 1975, all of his disciples who passed the Bhaktivedanta exam would be empowered to initiate disciples. What happened? Obviously, that was not something that he followed up on. And as I said, those letters, written in January of 1969, were the only time he ever mentioned this in relation to these exams. I will put forward my own opinion on why that was, on what happened, as I go over the conversation that occurred on April 22nd, 1977. Still, there were a number of other times over the years that prior to April 22nd, 1977, Srila Prabhupada had said that he wants his disciples, even saying all of his disciples, would become gurus and accept their own disciples all over the world. With that in mind, we will begin our chronological analysis.